let's take a look at the potential release dates for Metroid Prime 4 and Metroid Prime Trilogy. Hello everyone, my name is Adam and welcome to Time Lag Gaming. So as you have probably already heard from the dozens and dozens of videos, Metroid Prime 4 has restarted development. Now they are working with Retro Studios, the original makers of the Prime Trilogy, to produce this fourth entry. Basically, the game development was not going well and they did not want this Metroid game to turn out like some of the others have in the series. Anyways, you've already heard the news. Let's get into what this could actually mean for the release date of Prime 4 and the original trilogy coming to Switch. First of all, Metroid Prime 4 was never going to release in 2019. So many people thought it was coming in 2019, but I always thought we were going to get it in 2020 if development had gone correctly. But what about now with the development restarting? To get an idea of the release date for Metroid Prime 4, let's take a look back at the development for the original Metroid Prime game. The original Metroid Prime was the collaboration between Nintendo and Retro Studios. Retro Studios was created in 1999, and Metroid Prime began development in 2000. In this same year, Retro Studios was already working on 4 games, and they had a prototype first-person game engine. When Shigeru Miyamoto saw this game engine, he suggested a new Metroid. So then they started working on Metroid Prime. However, because of starting development on Metroid Prime, those 4 games were cancelled so they could focus on the one game. Nintendo had set a deadline for them. The game was finally released in November of 2002. So the original Metroid Prime game was only in development for about 2 or 3 years. Also, the developers at Retro Studios worked 80 to 100 hour work weeks during the last 9 months of development in order to reach Nintendo's deadline. This could have many implications for Metroid Prime 4. First of all, Retro Studios has been working on projects, but they have not put out a game for several years. And now it's possible that Nintendo had them put their other projects on hold so that they could focus solely on Metroid Prime 4. This is what happened with the original Metroid Prime game because Nintendo had a set deadline. With Metroid Prime 4 having its entire development restarted from scratch, it is possible Nintendo has a set deadline for them. During the Prime 4 development update video that Nintendo put out today, they were very sincere and apologized for the delay and the situation. Meaning it's even more likely that Nintendo has a set strict deadline for this game's release. It's completely possible that Retro is only developing Prime 4 now. And if everything goes according to plan, the earliest we could actually get Metroid Prime 4 is at the end of 2021. So not next year, but the following year. Now yes, this is basing it off the original game, and things are very different now. Prime 4 could be a much bigger game, but the context was to show you that it's possible for them to develop the game in 2 to 3 years. Although, back then, they did already have a prototype first-person game engine developed. So Prime 4 could definitely take longer than 2 to 3 years to develop. And the last few Metroid games have turned out poorly, namely Other M and Federation Force. And Nintendo restarted development of Prime 4 in the first place because they were not satisfied with the quality. So because of all this, Nintendo may not want to rush this one out. Meaning we might not see Metroid Prime 4 until 2022 or even 2023. This is of course all speculation, but a release window of 2021 to 2023 is a safe bet. Optimistically, it'll be 2021, but more likely 2022. It all depends on what kind of deadline Nintendo has set and if they can stay on track for that deadline. But either way, I think we can all agree that this delay is a good thing because it'll mean a higher quality game in the end. Now, onto the Metroid Prime Trilogy. It has always been super likely that Nintendo would bring over the Prime Trilogy to Switch. The Prime Trilogy was released back on the Wii and was also available on the Wii U. It makes perfect sense for it to come to Switch as an HD remaster. There are so many people who haven't played Metroid Prime, including me. And the Switch has a huge install base that continues to grow and will be even bigger in a few years when Prime 4 does release. Because of this, Nintendo obviously wants Switch owners to be able to experience the first 3 games before Prime 4 comes out. This will help sell more units of Prime 4, and they will make a ton of money from the trilogy. Some sources have claimed that an HD trilogy is already in development. Maybe Retro Studios was already working on an HD remaster before this whole situation with Prime 4 went down. So I'm curious if the Prime 4 delay will affect the release of the HD trilogy as well. It's completely possible. However, Nintendo oftentimes has other studios work on ports and remasters, so maybe it will not affect the release date. Many others, including myself, originally speculated that the Prime Trilogy was coming to Switch this year. I still think there's a good chance we could see the trilogy this year, but I also think it's possible the trilogy could be delayed until 2020. And since we might not get Prime 4 until 2021 or 2022, Nintendo doesn't really need to put out a Prime Trilogy until next year anyways. So those are my thoughts on potential release dates for Metroid Prime 4 and for Metroid Prime Trilogy on Switch. Just to recap, I think we are getting Prime 4 in 2021 or 2022, and that the Prime Trilogy could be delayed until 2020. But that's just my take. I want to hear from you. What do you think about this whole situation with Metroid Prime 4? What year do you think the HD Trilogy and Prime 4 will release? Let me know your take in the comments down below. Thanks again for watching.